they issue you with the NZ Police issue you with the temporary firearms permit. It's an A4 printout basically, which is your online application, but it's colour and they sign it with ink, and that's what you have to carry with you at all times when you're over there, along with your Aussie licence and passport and other identifying.
And she goes, well, it's because it's like a set of antlers, goes down the conveyor belt, we've got to process it like a bag. I was like, oh no, these are just like single ones. She goes, oh, don't worry about the fee then. So in my head, I'm like, right, I've got like 30 sets of antlers that are $150 a set.
Yeah, the stag let out one more roar, and it looked like he was going to come towards us because he was just standing there staring at us for probably all of, felt like ages. It was probably a minute and a half, just roaring, staring at us, trying to figure out what we were. And
back to Accurate Hunts, A Life Outdoors. I have Gio with us tonight, coming from what I would call the city, but anywhere north of Mittagong is the city, as we've just discovered. We've just been talking about something we'll rip into later, and I told him to shut up because he was giving away all the details. I don't like talking about it before we start, but looking forward to tonight. We're going to cover some fun stuff domestically and internationally that Gio's been up to. So welcome to the show, mate. How you been?
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Long time listener.
Yes.
Yeah. Trying to get out as much as possible, but I'm keen to tell the story and keen to describe what adventures I've been on, both here and over in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, that's what we're here to talk about. I've been, like you said, you're a keen listener. You've been hanging around. I think that's how we met. Just started messaging each other podcast-related topics some time ago, and kept in touch. And turns out we've got a few friends in common, and old Tristan and Dean as well. I'm sure
that's right.
Yeah. Poor old Dean. I ruined his private access. But I'll let him tell that story because he's coming on soon to talk about something as well. But you've been doing something recently that I want to say envy. I do a fair bit in New Zealand, but it's a little bit different. We do a lot of the estate style high fence guided stuff, and you've been over there doing the free range self-guided stuff, and that's what I got you on here to talk about.
Yeah. Keen to go through it. It's such an awesome place. So, it blows my mind every time I go there. So, love to talk about it. And
how many times have you been?
I've been over there twice, this year and last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'd call myself a pretty new hunter. I've been hunting for about 3.5 years.
Talk about that. Why did that start?
Well, I've owned rifles I'm 36 now, pretty much shortly after I turned 18, and applied, got the permit to acquire, went into the store, and they sort of said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to shoot some rifles. I want to go target practice, but also want to get into hunting. So long story short, ended up with a Weatherby Vanguard 270. I did a bunch of range days and enjoyed that a lot, but never actually got into the hunting side of things because I just didn't know anyone that hunted. None of my friends hunted. I'm as I've heard you say before, first generation hunter. None of my family hunted, but it's always appealed to me. I was actually born in Europe, in Italy, and moved to Australia when I was 3. I've grown up and lived in Sydney my whole life here on the northern beaches. So the beach is something that's a big part of my life, either in, under or on the water. That's sort of where I spend most of my time. But the hunting side I just never got into. And it wasn't until it was after a cray dive. I think COVID had just hit, so plenty of time, to spend locally. And I was with a mate, shout out to Jack, and he said he was going to for a hunt on the weekend, and that was kind of it. The rest is history. I said, mate, let's do this. Teach me, and sort of how do you do it? I didn't know where to start. I think I actually had an R license way back when I was 18, 19, but let that lapse because I just never used it. And so renewed the fee, paid the fee, renewed the R license, and he said, "This is what you got to do: book this forest, and we'll go down." And that, the rest is history. So that was relatively new to hunting, but done a fair bit of it over the last 3.5 years.
And the majority's been, has all of it been public land?
Yeah, it's all been public land hunting. So
didn't you just go and check out a private block when we spoke about it?
Yeah, I've hunted. That was the first. So recently, you're right. Recently, through a friend through work, got introduced to a property owner and went over there, but I wouldn't call it hunting. It was more shooting. And that was only for a couple of hours. So
how was it?
It was, well, okay. So we
I don't know the answer because we spoke about when I asked you to come on the podcast, you were like going down that afternoon. I haven't heard how it went.
Yeah, it went well. So it kind of blew my mind, actually. We get there and I met the property owner. We had dinner and a beer, and then it was already dark by then because it was only recently. So we went out for a bit of a spotlight, and literally the first paddock gate that we opened, there was a decent buck just standing there. We didn't take it. It ultimately gave us a slip, but we went and bumped into shortly after a mob of six does, and shot one. That was probably within the first half an hour, and took the meat, chucked it on the back of the ute, and, and that was kind of it. So
welcome to private land spotlighting.
Yeah, so I haven't hunted it per se. I've shot that one time, but pretty much the last 4 years have been exclusively state forest hunting, both central west and down south.
Yeah, and you can keep. Yeah, I keep blocks like that as meat runs. You know, like if they're that easy and you need some meat, you just whip out at night and go and get a few, and it gets it done pretty quickly. You don't need to put the full weekend into, but it's not as romantic either.
I had literally come back from New Zealand, and so I didn't have much of a leave pass to go for longer than what I did. So I drove down, I think it was probably 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. I left here in Sydney, got down. It's a couple of hours south of Sydney, and probably 2.5 hours. Got there, had dinner, went out for a spotlight, and drove home all in the one night. So, definitely what I would call a meat run.
Yeah. No, that's efficiency at its max.
Yeah, absolutely.
And okay, so you've done a few state forests and things, and you become reasonably confident in New South Wales state forests. Like you successful.
Yeah, I think we've got absolutely. I think we've got a really good system. The R license system, obviously compared to some of the other states in the country that don't have public land hunting, Queensland, for instance. So probably try and get out on average, maybe every couple of months. I'll probably do maybe 6 or 7 hunts a year, all seasons, winter, summer, the rut. So,
do you prefer to target one forest and know it well, or do you sort of touch on a few depending on seasons?
I do like the aspect of learning new terrain, learning a new forest, the challenge of being somewhere you haven't been. The challenge I've got is with a 2-year-old, the time now is so hard to get. And so I've tended to focus on forests that I know and have sort of scouted and I'm pretty familiar with. So don't get me wrong, I do enjoy different forests, but I've tended to, probably in the last year or so, focus on the same forest.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question. I haven't asked other people this, but I want to make it a bit of a regular question. And it's, what would you consider a successful hunt? And I'll give you my answer. Like I said, I haven't asked this question before. And to me, a successful hunt is killing something. I'm not at the point where a successful hunt is coming home with a smile on my face, not seeing anything. And it comes from a private land background, not these guys that spend 4 or 5 years trudging through state forest not to shoot anything. So it's situational.
Yeah. Look, definitely a successful hunt is definitely one that I come home with some meat. That's definitely a success in my books. But at the same time, in the early days of state forest hunting, I was going multiple times, multiple trips with nothing. And for me, I mean, yes, I hunt, and the main goal is to get meat. But for me, it's I work in the city. I'm corporate job, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I live in what you describe as the city, the suburbs of Sydney. It's, for me, getting out to the bush is a way to really switch off, unwind, disconnect. And so, being out there is just a success in itself. Having the time to be immersed in nature, that's really a big part of it too. A big part is obviously coming home with meat, because, I ended up having to buy a chest freezer at home, and, that's stocked. We eat sort of venison at least, once or twice a week at a minimum. So for me, a big part of it is, being in a position where you can, feed the family off the things that you catch, be it deer or fish or, anything else.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that you're a pretty keen fisho, being that close to the beach. Do you bow hunt as well? Like, you're a spear fisho, so do you bow hunt?
I haven't made the transition yet. Some of my mates do, now that sort of I've got a decent crew of people that I can hunt with, and most of them actually I fish and spearfish with. So some of them have made the transition to bow hunting. I haven't yet, but I can definitely see myself making that transition soon. I think I wouldn't say I've fully mastered, if you like, hunting with a rifle yet. There's a lot of things I want to achieve with a rifle first before I up the challenge and move to bow hunting. But I can definitely see myself going there in time.
Flipping that around a little bit, I found that I wouldn't call myself a bow hunter by any means. Definitely a bow shooter, not a bow hunter. But any little bit of bow hunting I do or spend time with someone that does do, it makes you a better rifle shooter, because it forces you to get closer. It forces you to pay attention to the wind more. The little things that you can kind of let slip a little when you're rifle hunting. But I think, it will improve you as a rifle hunter if you did try it.
Big time. It's, as you know, having done a couple of state forest hunts, it's bloody hard. It's bloody hard enough with a rifle, but I can definitely see the way that your skills would just get so much better.
Leave the bow for your private block.
That's right. Maybe. Yeah, absolutely.
When the pressure's not on as much. So a couple of years now, 3.5 years in New South Wales State Forest, and then you decided, how did the New Zealand thing come about? Because it's sort of not something most people do early on in their hunting journey.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. I think, and actually probably shout out to Tristan for getting me onto Hunters Club. So for anyone that hasn't watched any episodes that those guys do, it's a really, really slick production, mainly hunting in New Zealand, all sorts of species. And they do some free episodes on YouTube. They also have a paid series that you can purchase, or single episodes if you like. But that really just showed me how, like, what hunting is in New Zealand and what it's all about. And that just appealed to me massively. So I think you and I spoke when I was doing a bit of research into it, and ultimately I did go the DIY route on public land. But it's just, regardless of whether you go guided or DIY, I encourage everyone to look into it and get over there. It's so close. The scenery is amazing. The hills are just, they're challenging, as I'll tell you in a little bit, but it's just so good being there.
And it is just so close, like 4.5 hours. You can get flights for $600 return if you book far enough in advance. I liken it to, or I say that it's usually the first international step for an Australian hunter. My first international trip, I went to Africa. That's not normal. That's not the normal journey. Most people, dip the toe in the water and try New Zealand, because although the hunts may be expensive from the guided point of view. The travel's not. Whereas if you go to Africa, you spend a lot more on the flight, but a lot less once you get there. So it's dangerously close, and some guys are just addicted to it and they do it regularly. And it seems like that started for you.
Yeah, I mean, if I can do this trip once a year, I'll be a happy man. For all the reasons that you mentioned, it's so close. They have a really good public land system. You literally just put in. You go onto the Department of Conservation website in New Zealand, and it's basically your first name, address details, email, where you're hunting, and you click apply, and it spits out a PDF. That's pretty much the permit from a public land perspective. There's obviously other steps as Aussies to get over there, which we can get into as well. But yeah, it's pretty open. You just book where you want to go and go.
How did you pick where you wanted to go?
That I did have a bit of guidance with. So a friend of mine that lives here is a Kiwi. He has a friend over there that hunts, and he actually joined us on that first hunt. So it was myself and him and another guy that didn't hunt. But in the lead up to it, he had hunted there. He'd hunted there a couple of times in winter and sort of in summer. So knew the conditions and knew sort of the terrain. And I was happy to go where he sort of suggested to in that general area. So
was he going with you?
He ended up coming with us that first year. He didn't this year, but he came that first year. But actually met us on the second day. So, and we can get into it later. But the start of the trip's a bit of a river crossing, and it had rained. I was actually over there for a wedding the first year I went there. So that was the original purpose of the trip to the South Island. And I feel for them, but they must have had 100 mil of rain on their wedding day. In the marquee, it was completely sealed. The wedding guests had sort of 2 inches of water, at their feet. And so when we got there to the spot, he'd sort of marked it, sent me the marks on the app, and we get there, and the river, was, we did a dry run without our packs. It was up to our chest. At the deepest point, and flowing really hard. Whereas, he'd said, and freezing, absolutely freezing. Whereas, he'd said when he hunted it, he said, it's probably waist high. So it was running probably a couple of foot higher than it would normally. So he ended up sort of meeting us on that second day, but we wasted probably 6 hours trying to find a safe spot to cross, and that's a whole thing in itself. Those rivers can be pretty dangerous, so not to be underestimated. That's for sure.
That's a lot of weight that water can push too.
Oh yeah, especially when you're carrying a 30 kilo pack on your back with a rifle.
Yeah, it's so nervous. It's like when you fall over at the pub and you don't want to drop your beer. You do anything, you'll fall over, but you won't drop your rifle. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's
Did you do it in multiple trips, or you just carried all your stuff over in one go and then got dressed on the other side?
Yeah, so the first year we did it, well, we had to find a safe spot to cross. So we actually tried probably 3 or 4 times in that sort of 5 or 6 hour block that it took us to cross. And we did a dry run just in our togs and Crocs. Crocs are an essential bit of gear when river crossing over there. And so we finally found a place. It was sort of hard the river was split in two, so we had to cross at a point that was safe and then find another spot to cross. So it was almost like 2 crossings in one. We did that without our packs, and then we crossed back and then did it with a fully loaded pack the second time. So, yeah, it took us 2 goes.
Yeah, that stuff's pretty fun and scary at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
So he met you on the second day. So we'll just start with your first trip on the first year. Was it pretty daunting, or were you excited, do you think? When I say daunting, I mean you're at the bottom where the river is, but I know what you're looking at, even though I don't know where you were. It's a massive hill in front of you most times.
Yeah, definitely. So there was a sort of river mouth, if you like, that fed into the main river that we had to cross. And so we're staring down the valleys, sort of up the river. And I'm just going, how the hell are we going to do this? It's raining, it's windy, it's cold. I'm with another mate who he doesn't hunt here in Australia or overseas. He was just there for the hike and the experience. And it was his friend that ultimately gave us the pins in the area and where to hunt, but then was meeting us on the second day. And it was daunting as hell. We almost gave up. We were at the point where we'll try one more time, but we just, it's impossible to cross it at this point. So I'm glad we didn't, and we crossed it, and then hiked sort of 10K up the river and got to the hut that we all agreed that we'd meet at. And
were you on a trail?
There's a trail that leads to the hut. So the thing about New Zealand is they've got a really good app called NZ Topo, and that's kind of what I use for the majority of the planning of the hunt. And it marks out where there's tracks, where there's huts. It marks hunting areas, so where you're allowed to hunt, things like that. So you can mark waypoints, leave a snail trail. It measures, your elevation, your distance. You can measure distances, so it's pretty useful. So we got to the hut and we waited there for him and in-reached him to let him know that it was a bit of a nightmare to cross. But yeah, sure enough, he by the time he got there in the morning, first thing, he managed to cross at the original spot because the water had subsided. It drops pretty quick. It rises and drops pretty quick from what I've experienced. And sort of 3 hours after that, he was with us at the hut, and we started the hike up to the tops.
And when you say hut, for those people that haven't been over there, can you describe, do you know much of the history about the huts and why they were set up and where they are?
I don't know much about the histories. Maybe you can describe.
Only a little bit, and please jump on and correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of them belong to fur trappers and things that was along their routes while they were trapping possums and wallabies and whatnot over the years. And they were built, but there was an issue, and again, someone's going to blast me for talking about this wrong. There's an issue just recently where I'm going to say Doc went in and demolished a heap of them. And they weren't supposed to. They sort of knew there'd be repercussions, but they wanted to get rid of them because they were introduced type, Anyway, that ended up in court or whatever. So please, someone correct me and tell me the real story. But yeah, very old Snowy Mountain style huts. Have you seen any of the stories?
I haven't, no. But I have seen some over there, and they range in size. They range in quality. Some you can book, some you can't.
Yeah.
The main one that we used for that first night was, I think it's got one bunk bed and one other mattress in it, so it sleeps three. I think you can sleep a fourth on the floor, but it's pretty basic. That's pretty much all that's in there. It's a wooden with a tin roof most of the time, tiny shack, and that's pretty much it.
To get out of the bad weather.
Yeah, definitely. We used the hut on this year's trip just because we had some weather coming in on the last day and didn't want to be hiking down a mountain in those conditions. So yeah, we stayed there, but they, the downside with it was actually when we got there the first night this year, it was peak raw, and the hut was full, and there was probably 10 tents around the hut. So they are popular on those tracks.
A good atmosphere though.
Yeah, it was. We actually got in late this year, so I only spoke to a couple of the people that were there. The first thing that I saw was a nice 8-pointer head just resting up against the hut, which was pretty cool. It definitely got us all excited.
Did you use the hut as a base just for the first night or for the whole hunt?
Well, so we flew both times. So the first trip I flew internal from Queenstown to Christchurch. This year I just flew from Sydney first thing in the morning. We got to Christchurch probably 2:00. And so we used the hut as a base only because by the time we got the car and drove, it's a couple of hours from Christchurch. By the time we crossed the river, the sun had, basically the sun had already set. And so it was head torches on and we got there pretty late. So we just pitched a tent near the hut and then started the hike the next morning.
Yeah, and then just kept coming back to there each night.
No. So we set up on the tops. So we packed the tents up and.
How far are we talking from the river, just to visualise? From the river to the hut and then from the hut to the top?
River to the hut was about 10K, pretty flat.
Mm-hmm. There's
a few smaller river crossings that you have to do, but pretty much it's a narrow track, so it's pretty easy going. But so that's about 10K, and then from the hut, it's more about the vertical meters that you're ascending because there's no track to where sort of the spot that we were hunting. That's kind of the most challenging part of the whole experience.
And can you liken the terrain and what you were sort of pushing through when there was no track? Can you liken that to anything we have here in Australia? Like, was it ferns? Was it mossy? Was it, it's nothing super prickly over there. There's some that really want to eat you, but.
No, well, that's a good point. I mean, over there, you're walking through, tussock and long grass and, nothing over there can really, compared to Australia.
We don't have the snakes.
You're wearing gaiters, but purely for grass seeds and moisture protection rather than snake bites. So, look, the non-track ascent, the climb up it's thick as anything. It's as you said, it's mossy, it's slippery. Your foot's going through tree roots. We're carrying a fully loaded pack, 30 plus kilos. It's actually pretty dangerous, both going up and going down. So you really need to take your time. But the hills are steep. They are very, very steep. I think the ascent was 930 meters from the hut to basically where we set up camp, and then you're pretty much on the tops, but you can go another 100 meters if you want to the very top. It's a big climb, and it's just you got to go slow. There's no other way to do it.
And why had you picked that spot? Was it you chasing reds, tar, chamois?
Mainly reds. We'd seen a bunch of reds the first year. I think so. Last year we only had a day and a half on the tops, just because of the timing and the way that we'd planned it, and a day either side coming in and out, staying at the hut. But we went. So we saw probably 40 deer in that day and a half on the tops. I was a bit early for the roar last year, so we didn't actually see any stags, but we knew the area had deer, and the guy who we went with had seen deer and in numbers, so we figured that was sort of our best bet. And we didn't see anyone else up the tops there, no other hunters. And that was the same for this year as well.
Go that far?
Well, that's the other thing. You go somewhere so hard to get to. Chances are you're gonna cut out most people. We bumped into a couple that were crossing when we were crossing this year, and they'd heard a bunch of roaring, but they just hunted the river and the flats at the bottom. So some people do that, and they're there, but I don't know. I like going up the tops, being able to just sit on a ridge and just glass and spot and stalk. I really enjoy that. You don't get a lot of that state forest hunting here in New South Wales. So
no, you don't get the long range visibility.
That's right. Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of use for a spotting scope. But so if you're running a spotting scope, then are you guys sharing loads in your backpacks, or is everyone just looking at their own stuff?
That's a really good question. You would have thought I learnt last year with an overly heavy pack In fact, speaking to Tristan, who's someone who's an absolute gram chaser, we'll ex-army, or still in the army, I should say, but I've done a few tours and, he was telling me how he cuts his toothbrush in half and he squeezes the toothpaste out of the tube and, go full minimal. But I never got that. And I never understood why people did that. I don't know. You don't know until you then are in a position where you've got a pack that's way too heavy for you, and you very quickly, learn from that mistake. And you would have thought that I learned this year, but I probably did cut about 5 kilos. I managed to, last year I think I had 3 knives, 2 power banks, full cookware setup, my own tent, and not even one of those lightweight ones. I think it's 3.5 kilo tent, so 2-manner, but still pretty heavy. So yeah, you kind of, you try and, the more times you do it, the better you get at it, and the more streamlined your gear setup is. So, I've forgotten if there was a question there that you'd asked.
No, I said you sharing the load.
Oh, sharing loads. Yeah. So to your point, we did to an extent, but not as much as we probably should have. So, you probably only need one jet boil. We had, one per person. You probably only need, you could probably share a tent if you wanted to, really. You could share a lot of things, but I think, I think we didn't really do that properly this year, and we'll probably, our packs are probably a little bit too heavy. So next year will probably be a little bit lighter.
2 of you hunting this year, or just still you and your
mate?
mate?
2 of us hunting. Yeah, so there was 4 of us all up. 2 guys that were with us for the hike, and 2 of us hunting. So 2 rifles.
Handy.
So
they don't carry a rifle, but they can carry some meat out.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny we mentioned Tristan. I mean, I talked to him. I don't talk to him that much now, but he put a post up the other day on State Forest page, I think, and it was about what's in his backpack. And
I saw that.
The responses were pretty interesting, because I understand that he's a gram chaser, but a lot of people don't know that about him. And they were questioning things, and then the general consensus was, no, I just take a 4-pack of E's and a pack of Durries and my dogs.
And the dog, yeah.
It was some funny answers on there. But when you really get into the serious, weight-restricted hiking challenges, it's important. Like, it matters. And it mattered. And I'm definitely well away from my peak fitness, but when I was at my peak, I was, fit enough that I could carry. I think the worst one I did was like 54 kilo pack out, and it was a 10-day backpack trip, and it was a mountain goat hunt, and it was just myself and the client. There's some other stories related to that trip about bears and things, but not important. It was a 10-day pack in, and I took everything, because the hunters turn up with backpacks that aren't designed for backpacking, and his was like an Ebel stock, which is an American brand. There's heaps of fabric, not a lot of storage, and it's got these arms that swing out. It opens up and you can put your rifle in there and then like pack it in it. It's like a swaddle for it, but anyway, it's just wasted fabric and weight. So I had the tent, I had the food for both of us for 10 days. I had my hunting gear, sleeping bag, the cooking gear. I packed in, he had a mountain goat tag and a black bear tag. So I packed in 4 cans of beer. I thought we could celebrate one each. So we got in there, and it wasn't a massive hike in. I want to say we quad biked for like 3 hours to as far as we could get to a wilderness zone, and then we parked them up, and then it was like a 7-hour hike. And it wasn't treacherous. It was along a creek bed, crossing 3,000 times. But when we got there, we actually got in late. It was dark. I'd never been to this place. We were going to a dot on a map that my boss had showed me. And I was like, I'm had it. We're setting up camp. It's 10 o'clock. And I said, what have you got in your backpack? And he pulls it out, and it's like gun, chocolate, knife, rain gear. And that was it. I was like, and he had no room for anything else. So we're unpacking, And we set up tent and did all that stuff. And I got out the beers and I showed him. I was pretty excited. I thought it'd be a nice treat. And he goes, I don't actually drink. So that was a waste of, what's that, 1.2 kilos or something.
50,
anyway.
How heavy did you say it was? 50?
On the way out, I came out because we shot a goat.
Right. Yeah.
But he couldn't fit any more in his backpack. So anyway, we'll get to the way out. So I set up the camp. We woke up in the morning and the actual designated camp spot was like 300 meters from us, but we couldn't see it at nighttime. And it was like a nice smooth sand bed and tie up rails for horses and all sorts of things. And we camped on this rocky piece of crap. But it was like 10 o'clock at night and I couldn't be bothered going any further. We hunted and, yeah, he was successful and shot this mountain goat. But we packed out, and so I had the mountain goat full body cape because no one half mounts a mountain goat. Full body cape and some meat. We couldn't take much. We took a fair bit down to camp and then we ate a fair bit for 2 days and then we packed out. But, yeah, 52 kilos it was. And I remember getting back.
That's
I just had
insane.
stuff hanging off my backpack everywhere. Not much was in it. Everything was around it. It was a Sky Archer 6,200-inch bag. It's a Stone Glacier. Great backpack. Love it. It's just over there out of sight. But we got back to the quad bike, and I remember taking my backpack off, and it's been a long explanation, but I'll get there. And you know when you walk down the bottom, you walk down steps, and your brain thinks there's one more, but there's not.
Yeah.
And your feet just do it, and you're like, oh, you stumble a bit. Or the same on the top. You think there's one more, and you put that big step in, but there's nothing there. I took my backpack off, and like I went to walk, but my body was correcting for a backpack I didn't have on. And I did these weird like moonwalk. It's like a baby giraffe, they've just been born, legs everywhere. And only for like, I reckon 4 or 5 steps. And then my body worked it out. But that was the weirdest feeling. And I definitely went home and culled a lot of gear. And I never took beer again. We went to whiskey. Because you can take one bottle of whiskey and you get a lot more shots out of it.
That's right. That's insane though.
Weight on beer. And it wasn't comfortable, but I was at my peakish fitness, which is like 83 kilos and strong and keen and dumb. But I wouldn't want to do it now.
Yeah, no, it's
30 kilos, you reckon? Yours was?
Oh, it was with the rifle. Yeah, so the pack I tried to. The rifle's probably 4.5 kilo all up with scope and bipod and
what pack are you running?
It's a bushbuck. What do they call them? Destroyers, 90 litre.
Oh, big one. Yep.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah, and
has the capacity to be big. I mean, you can always pack it down.
That's right. Yeah, so you can. I mean, I use it for short half-day trips here in Australia, but it cinches. The beauty of it is it's not the most lightweight pack, but you can take the sky lid off, and that's I think 5 litres, and then the sides just really cinch down pretty hard, so you end up with a pretty light pack, and it's got a meat shelf, which is good.
So it's got that full external frame.
It does. Not a full external frame. It kind of the pack kind of just comes apart, and you can shove meat in between the pack and the shelf. In saying that, actually, you can take the whole pack off and just have it as a frame. So yeah, I guess it does. Does have that. So that's pretty good. So that carried most of our gear on our trip. So with the rifle, pack, water, I think it was about 31, and then heavier on the way back. But
were you concerned about water being up there?
No, so I carry one of those. I bought one of those. I forget what they call the life straws, the water filtration systems. So it comes with the one I got came with a foldable bag with a big kind of sort of twist top valve. You can kind of scoop the water out of tarns, or the alpine lakes, they call them tarns. So when we set up at the tops, when we were looking at places to set up camp, even when we were e-scouting this year for tossing up whether we go somewhere else or not. But typically the flattest, when you're on the tops, there's not a lot of flat ground. And so when you are looking for an ideal campsite, typically the edges of the tarns are going to be the flattest spots. And so where we were set up for camp was 20 metres from a tarn. So, and that's all fresh water. You could probably drink it. I mean, it's not moving. I think we did last year. Well, most of the time you're boiling the water anyway for food, like if you're using dehydrated meals and stuff. But I just ran it through the filter, and it's as good as any water, if not probably the best water you'll drink. So
I don't think there's a whole lot of nervousness around drinking that water. I mean, they don't have beaver, giardia type stuff. You're quite high. You're not in livestock areas. It's again, I would probably personally take the risk and drink it, and not take a filtration system. But I'd want someone in camp to have it, and then I'd carry something in return for them, just in case you only found muddy puddles. But
yeah. I mean, with that thing, you can pretty much drink most water that you come across. I think it's designed for muddy puddles and things like that. But the water that we were drinking was, I mean, it's crystal clear, right? It's feeding from a waterfall, sort of at the top of the bowl where we were camped. So it gets replenished with a lot of the rainwater and topped up. And
is there any fish in there?
Not in the tarns. I mean, we didn't, certainly in the streams. Yeah, big time. There was plenty of big trout that we saw. You could just see them. You're just walking along the river and you just look over and then, there's a massive trout right there. A couple of the boys brought some rods and had a few casts, but no luck. But they're definitely there.
That's why it took you 6 hours to find a crossing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. It's something that, next time you'd come better prepared, more lures and more flies.
And you said your rifle weighs 4.5 kilos. Is it something you would consider lightening up and, buying a specific mountain rifle that might kick your ass when you shoot one, but because it's so light, just to shave some more weight?
Yeah, I definitely consider it. I just have the one main hunting rifle, the 270. I don't have I've got a 22, but obviously deer hunting, it's the one rifle that's been my go-to, and I find it's a pretty good all-rounder. It's definitely, as 270s do, they've got a bit of kick, but I like the way they shoot, and it's always shot pretty well and pretty accurately. So I would, but what would you be saying about a kilo for a lightweight rifle? Maybe get it down to 3.5?
I reckon you'd save a kilo.
So, I mean, there'd probably be other things in my pack I'd ditch first. Definitely share the load a bit more next time.
How did you go? Let's get into the food stuff, because food really interests me. But what did you pack? And you mentioned dehydrated, so I'm assuming you went down that route.
Yeah, we did. That's kind of the easiest thing in the backcountry, is just a bunch of dehydrated meals. You can get them anywhere. Over there, you can buy them in supermarkets, and there's a hunting and fishing store pretty much, on every corner almost, or so it seems.
Nice, yeah.
Or hunting-related store. You can pick those up anywhere. They're not cheap. They're probably range between sort of $12 and $15, depending on where you buy them and what size they are. But that was sort of our main staple over there. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. So breakfast, they do a cooked brekkie, or they do a like an oats type thing. So
granola and oats and things.
Yeah, that's right.
What brand did you go with?
We went with Backcountry Cuisine. And actually, so on that, it was it Easter Sunday when we landed. And so it occurred to me that, luckily it did, but nothing would be open when we land. And so things that that we were planning on getting over there, like things like, gas, buying all the meals when we landed, all that stuff we couldn't do. So we ended up taking the meals with us, but it ended up through another friend of a friend, getting some gas bought for us ahead of time. So that was handy.
A little hot tip for travellers: you can't fly with gas canisters.
That's right. So,
destination.
But Christchurch Airport's got a Bunnings literally next door to it. So that's what we did last time. And unless we fly on Good Friday or Easter Sunday, which this year happened to be sort of peak raw. You probably won't have the same issues. But so backcountry cuisine. So the point of all of that was when we landed, we obviously had to take it over there with us because we couldn't buy it because we were starting our hunting trip pretty much, the moment we landed.
How did customs like that?
Well, so they actually made a mate of mine who mixed things up. He thought he'd sort of mix things up with a different brand, and they because Backcountry Cuisine's a Kiwi brand, they had no problem with that. You declare that we had meat, and you can go on their website. And I rang in advance, and they said there should be no issues with freeze-dried foods. But the customs officer that my mate got actually took the non-Kiwi brand meal off him. So I don't know whether he just wanted to try it or what, but one of his meals got taken. So I don't know whether that's an actual rule or what, but yeah.
Did you find that you packed too much food?
We did, yeah, we did. So we ended up with a bit left over, only because we were successful this year and I shot a stag. So we ended up eating that for most of our meals. So we had a bit left over, but essentially we only took breakfast, lunch and dinner for the days that we were there. So had we not shot something, probably.
If you want to shave some weight, I drop like usually one breakfast and one dinner. I always find that there'll be like at least one night you come home and just wrecked. You're like, nah, just not eating, just going to bed. And I've never come home and gone, oh, geez, like I ran out, or I always still have something left. But yeah, you've got to be careful. But I've got one backcountry style meal in my emergency bag at all times, and it's probably well out of date. This is from New Zealand days. I found a clip the other day.
They last 4 years.
They're well out of date because they're in there longer than that. But I found a Cliff Bar that no longer resembled a Cliff Bar. I don't know. It was all crumbled up. But did you have any snacks? Did you take
hot chockies? Definitely a welcome drink when you're up there and it's cold and wet and windy, like it was for us. So,
and they weigh nothing.
Sachets, yeah. That's right. Sachets of that. Cup of soup I found was another good sort of snack when you're sort of in between meals, or if you just don't feel like a full meal. That's kind of a good lightweight. Yep. Obviously, coffee. We didn't really take too many snacks, or I didn't anyway. A couple of the boys took some chocolate and some snakes, which got devoured pretty much the first day. But no, we didn't really take too many snacks apart from that.
And another thing to consider is your rubbish, because you've got to take things out with you. So often I consider the packaging on things, and I try not to take cans because it's hard to pack down on your way out, and you still weigh a fair bit. One of my favourite meals is 2-minute noodles and tuna sachet. And you sort of, cook your 2-minute noodles and then throw your tuna in at the end and heats it up and just mix a bit of protein with your crappy MSG 2-minute noodles. But I would do the sachets because you can actually pack them down quite small.
I mean, that's the thing on the MSG side, I don't know what they've got in them, but definitely after a few of them, after a few days of eating the backcountry meals, they all start to taste the same. Yeah. So it's good having a bit of variety.
What about energy though? Do you think they gave you what you needed while you're up there? I find they're really high in sodium, and you've got to be careful that get a bit too salty.
Yeah, definitely lots of salt, lots of other stuff, obviously. But we weren't hungry, I would say. I think, between all the snacks that we had, most of the time we were, walking around and hunting and doing stuff. So you don't really think, you kind of just eat because you need to. And sometimes we'd, have a late lunch and then no dinner type thing. So have a big brekkie because you wouldn't eat before the morning hunt. You'd come back around 10, coffee, brekkie, and you probably wouldn't eat lunch till 3 or 4 before you go out for the afternoon session. And as you said, you come back and you're like, no, straight to bed.
Straight to bed, right. Anyway, enough about the food. Unfortunately, we better get into some hunting stuff. So you've already given away the ending. You shot a stag. How many deer did you see this year? If you saw, 30 or so last year.
Yeah, a lot more stags. So last year we went about just over a week earlier than this year. So I think last year the trip started on the 23rd, which should be sort of, I mean, I'm no expert, but that should be sort of, the roar should be in motion. We didn't hear any roaring last year. I heard a very faint roar on the 26th on the way down. This year was next level up. We crossed the river, and every side of the mountain, every sort of valley we walked past had a stag in there roaring its head off. It was like we were there for the peak of it, and it was awesome. But yeah, no stags last year. Probably 40 hinds. This, in a short period of time. So there's definitely deer there. And some of the locals are saying that actually the choppers aren't allowed in there, which is why the populations are a bit higher in that area. This year we probably saw 15 in the sort of 2 and a bit days on the tops that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And but definitely more stags. I think we saw three stags. Yeah,
and one obviously met your demise. Do you want to tell us how that happened?
Yeah, so it was actually we had just gotten to the top. So the climb, as I sort of alluded to before, was the most brutal thing I've ever done in my life. 6 hours later, we get to the top and set up camp, exhausted, had a meal, and there was about half an hour left of half an hour before sunset, and I said, all right, well, we don't have long, but let's go have a look. Near camp, it was probably 400 metres to a vantage point that overlooked pretty much the whole side of the mountain. And so we went over there and, as I said, running out of light, set up the tripod, put the binos up, sat down, put my eyes to the binos, and I reckon it was all of maybe 15 seconds. And I was like, guys, there's a deer. And I couldn't really see because it was probably 700 metres. I ended up ranging it. So it was pretty far, but I just somehow my binos landed on it and there it was.
And that's not that easy to spot in the tussock country until you get your eye in for it.
Yeah, no. And so I guess I was lucky, or I don't know, but spotted him pretty much straight away. And I couldn't tell whether it was because it was so far away, and I was just, we didn't have a spotting scope. I just had my 10 times binos, and had a better look. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, it's because he was facing away. He was probably 100 metres from the tree line and just sitting there. He just sat down and it was roaring, and he got up and then I could tell he turned his head, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a stag. I wasn't sure on how big he was, but I've before that trip never shot a stag, never shot a buck. So I've shot a heap of does, a couple of spikers here and there. I actually shot a buck with no antlers as my fourth deer. I think probably shot about 25 now, but it's like I've had buck or stag repellent on every time I hunt because, I've had a few opportunities, but never shot one. And so, when I saw him, I was like, guys, I'm going. I'm going. And I didn't really care if it was a massive trophy or not. It was a stag, and it looked like an okay one. And so I thought, yep, I'll go after it. And with the fading light, I just said, yep, I've got to go now. And so pretty much ran. There was a series of guts, and kind of the approach was mostly hidden for at least the first 300 metres. And I got to a point where, and I had to roll the dice in terms of if there was other deer and hinds that saw me, then so be it. But the wind was swirling. It wasn't really consistent. It was kind of, kind of up my ass. And so I had to really just act quickly. And so I got to about, I think I ranged him at 350 or 340. And I had a good ledge I could get a rest on. And he'd sort of moved since I spotted him. Probably 10 minutes had passed since that initial sighting. And I thought, he's moving, he's starting to walk, he probably senses something's up. I know he hasn't seen me, but he's probably caught my wind and knows something's not right. Yeah, got a whiff, and yeah, he's up, and he was stretching, and he was off for a walk. So I thought I arranged him, and I'd done a little bit of sort of longer range practice ahead of it, ahead of the trip, and so I was sort of semi confident that I could get the shot off with the bipod and a proper rest, and so I thought, yeah, I'll have a crack. I'm pretty certain I can do it. And he'd sort of paused. I waited for him to turn broadside, so I set up and lay prone, and I was steady. I focused on my breathing, and which was, yeah, the adrenaline at that point in time was crazy. But got a rest, focused on my breathing, sort of bottom of my breath, just slowly pulled the trigger, squeezed it on, and heard the thud. The delay on that distance, that's probably the longest. It's easily the longest range shot I hit. I've done on a deer, and heard the thud, and instantly sort of got the wobbles, and I was like, okay, it must be a pretty good shot. And yeah, it didn't go far. I think he went maybe all of 10 meters and dropped, and that was it. The feeling, I mean, it was just, I can't describe it. The range of emotions. I looked back at the boys and they're waving, and I started just running towards him, like once I'd seen he's dropped, and try to get there before dark and get him, because by that stage, sunset had happened and it was sort of nearing on last light. So got there and he was expired. The shot ended up being pretty much straight through the heart. So it was actually a little bit low, but it worked out well, just behind the shoulder. And so I was kind of very happy with that, and just enough time for a few photos. The boys came down with with a few spare hands, and we took a bunch of meat and got a bunch of photos and walked back under head torch a long way back. Yeah, we've because he was down probably, I don't know, it's probably 100 meters lower from where we were, maybe even more. It was a pretty big pack out back to the tents, but a very happy one at that.
I bet your legs were weary after that day's walking.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I don't say that lightly. That climb is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. It's not easy. So yeah, the legs were definitely jelly, but got back to camp and just said, no dinner, just straight to bed. And stoked.
He's on the wall behind you, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Turn your camera, just for those that are watching, you can see it.
So he's a 9-pointer. So he was 5x4. Yeah, 5x4. So it's probably not the best. There we go. It's probably a better angle. But
for those that are listening and not watching, I apologise, but we'll put a photo up.
So it ended up being 5x4, and mate, to me that's as a first. It's an absolute trophy, and hanging proudly on the fireplace.
Did you keep hunting the rest of the trip?
We did, yeah, we definitely did. So that was day 2. We had a couple more days. Unfortunately, we got fogged out. The next day we woke up, the alarm went off pretty early, an hour before, at least an hour before first light, I think it was, and looked outside, and it was such a still night, gone to bed. There was not a breath of wind. It felt like there was 2 stags roaring literally either side of our tents. I've never heard anything like it. It was, just an experience. But we woke up, unfortunately, just completely fogged in, and that lasted till most of the early afternoon. So I think it was about 2:00. So our visibility was very limited. They were roaring, but we just, made things very, very difficult, virtually impossible. So had a hunt. We got eyes on one actually that afternoon. The fog had lifted, and actually it was most of the boys were in the tents just having a snooze, and I was fleshing out the head. And one of my mates had just come out of his tent, and he goes, Gio, come over here. I was like, what? He's like, Gio, just come over here. So I crept over, because where he was sitting was probably about 10 metres away. He was sitting on a rock next to the tents, and my vision was obscured by the side of the mountain that we were camping next to. And I went over there, and I look up, and on the ridge there's just an awesome stag, just like out of a movie, like something out of Hunter's Club, just perfectly skylined, just roaring his head off. And I just said, don't move. Just stay very still. And I kind of just really slowly crept around the side of my tent, got the binos, got the rangefinder, ranged him. He was 400 metres, got the rifle, and set it up. And then actually one of the other guys unzipped his tent, and I was like, don't move. He was the one that was going to take the shot. I just used my rifle. It's all set up. And unfortunately, actually, by the time he came over, the stag let out one more roar, and it looked like he was going to come towards us, because he was just standing there staring at us for probably all of, felt like ages. It was probably a minute and a half, just roaring, staring at us, trying to figure out what we were. And he ended up giving us a slip. So he went over the ridge, and we chased him. We went up and got into position and tried to look for him, but he was long gone. He was down in the bush roaring back at us. But yeah, it gave us a slip. So that was the second day. Probably the highlight of the third day, most of which was fogged out, and then saw some others on the next day. But it was like gale force winds, and they were pretty far. We just couldn't get close, and that's when the weather started to come in that afternoon. And so we went back, packed up, and headed to the bottom, and did a bit of fishing, and did a bit of hunting down the bottom. There was plenty of sign like I've never seen, but just it's different. It's much harder in thick bush. So we just didn't get an opportunity in that hunt.
You sent me a video of you guys crossing the river. Was that on the way out?
I should have sent you one on the way over, actually, because whilst it was running pretty low, both of the guys that went before us, my mates, there's four of us, two of the guys that didn't hunt, decided to go first, and despite it only being waist high, ended up in the drink, so completely drenched head to toe. But definitely the way back was scary. I'd actually learnt my lesson from last year, and thought what I'll do, because I saw them doing on Hunters Club, was pack raft. And I ended up just getting this, it's a 2-man sort of, just a cheap kind of like Kmart inflatable raft. So I bought that. I think it's not even $40, and I thought this will be the backup plan if we do get weather, because you have to expect.
Did you pack it the whole trip with you, or just took it across?
No. So we left it in the car. So we left it on the car on the other side of the river, knowing that we could, if it was bad, swim across, get it, bring it back, and just do trips with the packs in the raft. But and as it turned out, we got a bunch of rain the second last day, and the crossing on the way back was pretty bad. It was a bit of an adventure, to be honest. We ended up having to go get the raft. So one of the guys swam across, inflated it, and we thought we'd do it, because by this stage the river was just flowing, like it was going quick, and it's deceptively, you sit there and you go, it's not that bad, and then you look at it again and you go, yeah. Or you'll throw a rock in there or something, or you see a stick floating past, and you actually see how quick the water's flowing. You go, okay, and deep too. So yeah, well, long story short, we ended up getting the raft. My mate, we had some ropes. I took 60 metres of paracord as well, which was in the car, and with the idea that we'd do like a pulley system and ferry the gear across and then just swim across at the end. But very quickly realised that was proving to be more challenging. Like, you couldn't script it. We were trying to get the rope across. I think we taped it to a rock and then threw it, but it was too wide to actually be able to throw a rock that far. And so we got a smaller rock, and this is, time was passing. It was and it was almost getting to sunset again on that last day. And we got the rod and we got a pebble and we tied fishing line to the pebble, taped it, and cast the rod across to my mate who was on the other side so that he could tie the paracord to the rock, which was attached to the fishing line, wound that back and got it. So, we eventually got there, and then, I think it was the first trip, the raft just filled up with water. Like, there was proper rapids, and, the weight distribution, it just filled up with water. It almost ripped it out of our hands, and we almost lost the whole thing there and then without even attempting a crossing. So we had to think a bit differently. What we ended up doing was, the first two guys put their packs. So the raft, my mate came across with the raft, and we were all there with his pack and all of our packs. We ended up loading the raft with 2 packs, and 2 guys swam next to the raft and basically just kicked. And within, it must have been 2 seconds, they were like 50 metres down the river. Like, it was quick and approaching like another set of rapids. So they had to keep kicking. They did make it. And so we're all cheering. That was half the problem solved. 2 of the guys packs across and 2 people across. But we had to get the raft back. And so my mate ended up getting in the raft and paddling it back. And so we basically just did trips where he'd put, for the rest of the gear, a pack in with himself sitting on top of it, and I'd just push him out into the middle and he'd just paddle like hell, and you'd end up over 100 metres downstream. But, that's what we did. We did that for both the packs, and then a separate trip with the rifles and the head. So, probably six trips all up.
The oars on those $40 aren't great.
No, they're not, especially when you're trying to paddle 40 kilos plus yourself, probably 120 kilos, and antlers are in the way, and rifles, you're paranoid about losing over the side.
You just need the antler to pop the side once and you bug it.
That's right. So I don't know what we do next time. I don't know how we do it differently, but that's the challenge of hunting public land. And
you got no interest in choppering up?
I was going to say, I did look into it. It's not the cheapest. I mean, it's,
split between 4 of you, though. You get up in one trip.
You would, but I think it still worked out to be. I did bring a chopper company, the local one there, and I think it worked out to be something like $3,000 for the 4 of us. So you can definitely do it. I definitely consider it, for next time.
I know some people listening probably think, oh, that'd be cheating, choppering it in, but you're only over there for, how long was your trip?
Yeah, so that's the thing. You save,
2 days.
Our trip was 5 days. You save 2 days. But also you can go deeper. Yep. It's not like you're not walking. You're still doing a lot of walking when you're on the tops. And so you're really just saving.
You're not buggered when you start either.
You're not buggered, yeah. That's right. So you could do a day in, like if we somehow, started the hike after the river crossing, you could do the whole thing in one day to the tops, and you'd get there for an afternoon hunt. 10K up. That took us probably 3 hours, and then depending on your fitness level, some of the guys, can do it in 4. I think it took us like 5.5. So. That's pretty much a full day worth of hiking. So you could do, but you're still losing a day. That's the point. And so you chopper in, you're there, you're fresh. You can do a lot more walking on the tops.
The other benefit to choppers that people don't think about is on the flight in, I mean, in Alaska and things, you're not allowed to shoot on the day that you fly in, but you actually get to get just a quick glimpse of the terrain around where you camped, especially if it's your first time in. You might have scouted it, but just to physically lay eyes on, the surrounding 3 kilometers from where your camp is, just quickly from above. You might want to film it before you land. And then when you're in camp, you're like, oh, geez, that spot looked good, looked better than it did, or that spot looked worse in person than it does on a map. Just gives you a quick little advantage.
Yeah, definitely. Even just, being on the tops, looking back down the valley, you notice little clearings, and you go, oh, that looks really good. From elevation, so from a chopper, it'd be even better. So yeah, definitely, the time saved is a big thing. But yeah, the e-scouting side of things. I mean, I think I mentioned before that NZ Topo is great because it shows you can toggle between satellite and topo. So that's pretty good. You can zoom right in and you can just flick between the two. All sorts of overlays. But the other thing we used was just Google Earth. Ahead of the trip, I don't know how many hours I spent just 3D, and it's all really good picture quality. You can zoom right in. You can almost do like almost like a fake sort of chopper in, with the 3D imagery. So you can really scout. And to your point around water, looking at different spots, you can find where those tarns are. You can find where different bits that you want to. Different areas that look appealing.
Yeah, the choppers it's a viable option, and people might freak out because they, price usually by the hour, say $3,000 by the hour or something for a 5-seater. So you guys plus the pilot, but it's a 10-minute flight each way from the, or 15 minutes from most of these hangars up to where you want to hunt. And the other thing, if you get a good chopper pilot and you slip him a couple of hundy, they drop you into the better spots. Or most of these guys are hunters, or they just transfer hunters all season. So they know where the choppers have been, they know where the hunters have been, and if you can use that to your advantage, it helps. Definitely. So it's something I would encourage people to do. I mean, I saw your stories when you went. Was it 2 years ago now? The footage that you took out of Queenstown. It's just, it's unreal. So good. So, I would definitely consider it. Just as for all the reasons that we mentioned, you can go deeper. Going over there, you cut out the time. You get to see the terrain much better. Yep. So, yeah. It's also handy just to have as a backup for the exit. If weather turns and you need to get out fast, it doesn't hurt to let them know that you're going to be up there and say, hey, guys, I might give you a ring on anytime this week. And
that's right.
I know where you are. Now, I know you've written some notes for tonight and we haven't looked at them yet. And they were about how to book or how to fly over with a firearm?
Yeah, both. So I had to remind myself.
Two questions that I get asked regularly with the New Zealand stuff is how do you get a firearm over there? And it has changed in the last 4 or 5 years when old mate had his little... See, you do live in the city. That was a hot rod driving past.
Could you hear that? Yeah. I'm on a main road, so I'm actually just going to get my charger so it doesn't die on me.
That's all right. I'll go for a walk around the house. But the importation of travellers with firearms changed when, I don't know who he was, but old mate did his little shoot up over there and wherever he did it, and they changed the rules. So you've been through it recently, and I thought we'd break into it and just wait for you to finish doing some renos on your house.
Probably should have, would have been smart to actually have the charging cable next to where I was set up. So apologies. I will get that sorted.
And if you are listening, what you're missing out on here is in the background we can see Gio's chest freezer.
I can give you a tour if you like.
Yeah.
it's pretty well stocked. I'll just
a little chest freezer tip for people. I don't do it only because I haven't done it yet, but one thing I used to do on our other one was we had a whiteboard next to it, and I had a full list on the whiteboard as to what was actually in the chest freezer. And then when you pulled something out, you had to rub it off, because I just keep putting things on top and I forget what's at the bottom. And the problem with chest freezers is everything's at the bottom. Everything's always at the bottom.
That's definitely true. I've ended up having to just sort it into bags, really. Sausages, mince, backstraps, fish. That's kind of how I sort it and just pull out the whole bag. There's no other way to get to stuff in the bottom. It's just too difficult.
And you can't even, you actually can just write on the chest freezer, because they're that whiteboard material anyway. You could, because they're tin, you can write on them with a whiteboard marker and then rub it off as you go. So you just keep it on the lid so you know what's left in there. The other thing is, we spoke about it last week or whenever it was with someone else, but I'm guilty of this all the time. You put hot meat in the freezer, and by the time it freezes, it all locks into the bags underneath it, and then you can never get it out. And if you get it out, it will never go back in the same spot.
That's true. It's like a game of Tetris almost sometimes.
Right, yeah. What have you got written for us? What was the process like to get firearms over there?
Yeah, so I had to remind myself, because ahead of the podcast, I thought, geez, even this year, I was telling you before we started recording that.
That's why I told you to shut up.
Like I almost missed a step this year in terms of the form, one of the critical forms that I needed to do that I just completely forgot about. So, ahead of the podcast, I was jotting down some notes, but essentially, if you're going to do it yourself and do public land DIY, you want to have your permit in at least 4 months. So you want to get your gear, and everything kind of sorted, your plan roughly 4 months before, because you do need to, one of the key inputs into the application on the New Zealand visitors firearm application is your flight details. And there's just no way to do the application without those details. So that's kind of the hard thing. There's many hard steps, but that's one of them. And so you probably need to plan well in advance, probably, more than half a year, and have a rough idea of the dates that you're going to go, and then closer to roughly 4 months out, book your flights and start the application process. Sorry?
Is that when tickets open for flights? 4 months?
Oh, I think it's a year. I think it might be up to a year. I'm not actually sure. I've never booked that far in advance.
You could book 6 months out and start the process?
You could. Yeah, so you could book your flights whenever, and then as long as you're leaving 4 months lead time, that's the critical thing.
4 months is the minimum.
4 months is the minimum. I did it 3.5 months the first year, and it got through. Like, I was going over there anyway, so it wouldn't have been a massive deal. But so you can. They do recommend at least 4 months. The thing is, you kind of have to have nerves of steel, because that part of the process, the New Zealand visitor's firearm license, and I'll go through the steps that you have to do to get it. You don't get it until pretty much a couple of days before you travel. So that's the bit that's nerve-wracking.
Do you think that's on purpose?
I don't know, but
they look at it and go, "Oh, he's not turning up until then. We'll just issue it now."
Yeah, I have thought that. And I did ask them this year, because this year I got it 2 days before my trip. Last year I got it 9 days. So I went back, and when it got to about a week out, I properly started freaking out. And the downside with this DIY public land hunt is that you can't contact the team. So you can submit your application, but you ring the firearms registry over there, and they can't help you. They just say it's a team that, you can't ring. You can email, and I've emailed before, and it sort of takes a month for them to come back to you, type thing. So they're definitely not responsive, and there's no way to contact them. I think the first year I even rang some of the local police stations just to see if there's anything they could do, and they just pretty much said, no, what you're doing is correct, and you just got to wait. So, wait your turn. But what I would say is, if you're 2 weeks out and you haven't got anything, definitely what helped this year was the registry actually emailed on my behalf and CC'd me in. And I think, they must have emailed one of the managers there. But, they pretty much came back to me the next day and said, your application looks good. Apologies for the delay. Everything looks fine. You should be you should be good to get your permit before your trip. So don't worry, but we'll process it basically in a couple of days. So that bit of it is the first thing that you need to think about really in this whole process. So leave yourself plenty of time and apply. But to do that, there's a thing over there called RealMe, which is their login portal, and it's through that you apply for the visitor's permit. What you need is very, very detailed notes of your trip. They're going to want to know pretty much to the hour what you're doing. So full itinerary. This is when I'm landing. This is, in fact, they ask for the rental car company that you're going to use. Obviously, all your flight details, where you're going to stay, and so what else do they need? They need copies of your firearms license, your passport. So really for this whole process, both on the Border Force side here in Australia and the New Zealand side, there's the key documents that you're going to need is your passport, your firearms license, your rego papers for your firearms, and your driver's license. They're sort of the key 4 details that you need through pretty much every step. So back to the New Zealand side, the RealMe, you set up an account, you log in, you apply for the New Zealand Visitors Permit license. You put in all your trip details, you upload all your photos, your passport, your ID and everything. And then you do a test. So it's a multiple choice kind of test, but it's basically you have to pass that to be eligible to apply. And then you apply it. One thing that they do ask for as well, and this depends on your itinerary, is where you're going to store the rifles. So you have to be very specific with, your details around that. And last year I was at a wedding, so I wasn't hunting start to finish like I was this year, where I just said, I'm literally getting in the car and we're driving to the spot.
Storage will be in my tent.
Storage, I will not basically leave the rifle side for the duration of my time in New Zealand. Last year I had to, because they need proof that you're going to have safe storage. So I was like, what do I do here? I rang a couple of the firearm stores. They were a bit reluctant to they're just, so busy and timing. They just kind of have to be there when you want to pick them up and whatnot. So it's just a bit too difficult. And he just said, I'd like to help you, but I can't. I was like, okay, back to the drawing board. I don't know anyone in Queenstown that can, keep them for me. I ended up finding a guy who I just rang him. He runs a precision shooting type course, and I rang him and I said, mate, you don't know me, but I'm an Aussie and coming over to do a self-guided hunt. I just need I was hoping that you might be able to store my rifles while I'm at a wedding in Queenstown, and then I'll be flying to Christchurch and doing a hunt from there. And said, happy to pay or whatever, whatever you like, but this is a kind of problem I'm trying to solve for. And he was really good about it. He goes, yeah, mate, that's fine. So he's ended up sending me because you need full name, their address, and their permit details, their license number, and as part of the application. So, a couple of emails back and forth and sent those across, and I was able to finalise the application. But, they want to know, if you're travelling in your itinerary, if there's periods where you might be staying at a hotel before or after your hunt, that they're safely stored. And so that the challenge is if you don't know anyone, that you kind of have to just ring around and try your luck.
Can you just put down a hotel, or does the hotel need to have safe storage?
The hotel needs to have safe storage. So
my understanding is that most hotels, any ones that I've travelled through, especially South Africa, actually most hotels have a safe, and be it for firearms or for cash or gold or whatever. Did you look into that?
I did. Yeah, I definitely did. The places the hotel we were staying at didn't, and which basically ruled out that. But I ended up just getting lucky. So I think it was the third person I rang, and he said, "Yep, it's fine." So I didn't bother exploring that further. But yeah, so it helps if you know someone that's a local that you can store your firearms at, or if you get on someone that's willing to help you out.
Yep. Righto. So you got it over there, or you got that part of the permit.
So that part of it, yeah. So I was going to say, so the Aussie side of it, and I mentioned before the DOC hunting permit, similar to our license system here, but essentially, you're just filling your details. So that's the other document that is an instant spit out of a PDF that you keep, and it's valid for, I think, several months, maybe 3 months. There's a fee. I think it's $25. So that's the New Zealand side. On the Aussie side, it's a little bit quicker. What you have to do is there's a couple of actual different ways, but there's nothing online. Actually, so last year there was nothing online. This year I found an article written by I think it's Mansfield Hunting and Fishing down in Vic. They did a little write-up of it. So for anyone listening that, wants to have a look at that, that's a pretty good write-up. That helped a lot this year, just to refresh my memory. But the way I did it is, this is step one, regardless of how you do it, is register with Border Force in their what's called integrated cargo system. So you get a login. Depending on how many firearms you're taking, and I remember ringing the Department of Defence, and they said you've got two options. You can use a restricted goods permit, which is a form, or you can register and through the Department of Defence, and you get what's called a permit for export of goods. And essentially you can export more than 5 rifles if you want to. So go down the track if it's easier. It might be a little bit more time consuming at the start, but you can do it through us. And that way, if you're carrying multiple rifles or whatever, you're always going to be in the system. So I ended up going that route through the Department of Defence. And so I registered. So what you do is you register as a user of the Defence Export Controls website. And basically they issue it's called a CCID. You then use that to register as a client of Defence Export Controls. And what they issue you is a DCRN. And then basically you complete an application to export or supply controlled goods and technology. So that application, you pretty much put in your rifle details, your license details, your rego, your Department of Conservation NZ permit, because people go over there for shooting comps, and so they ask for your invitation for the competition. So in this case, it was a hunting permit, and a screenshot of the application that I'd submitted for the visitor's license for New Zealand. Once you've done that, as I said, you receive the permit for export of goods, and that's the first part. The second part of the Aussie side is through Border Force, and that's a B957 export declaration, and that's just a one-pager. They do have a key on the back for some of the definitions that they're asking for, so it's you just refer to the back of the page, but that's a one-pager. And once you fill that in, again with very, very similar details, you end up getting an EDN, which is your export declaration advice. So two forms on the Aussie side.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The two forms really the key ones on the Aussie side. It's the permit to export goods and the export declaration advice. And with those two things, along with your firearm rego, at the airport, you pretty much go straight to the Border Force counter, which is in Sydney. It's down near where you go get your GST refund, your tourist refund scheme. And they just check your serial number.
That's before you check into your flight.
Before you check in, yeah, absolutely. So you get to the airport, first thing you do is you go down to the counter there, they check it, they open it up, check the serial number, and then they escort you back to the check-in counter, and they stand there while you check into your flight, and then they escort you to the oversized goods where they watch the rifle get put on the belt and scanned, and off they go. So definitely allow enough time before your flight to do that. The first year I went over there, we ended up missing our flight by 2 minutes. So safe to say the missus was not too happy with me.
No, I bet.
Rerouted via Auckland. So
did they handle your rifle?
They handle my rifle in so much as they check the serial number. So you open it up. Obviously, you've got hard lock case. You pop it open, they look at it, they check the serial number, put it back, and you lock it all back up. A thing to note is
not allowed to unless they have a firearms license.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
Because you're not allowed to unless you have a firearms license.
Yeah, I mean, it may have just been they tilt it so they look at it. So I'm not, but
it's not an argument I want to have with them either. While you're in that position, but
no, definitely not. The other thing to note is your ammo. So you put, it's quite specific. You put how many rounds. If you've got a removable magazine, you've got to list that as a separate item. The number of rounds that you're taking, they've got to be packed in their original factory case. So there's a bit to it, and it's got to be separate, obviously, in your check-in bag. So that can go with your regular suitcase. That doesn't have to go into oversize. And the other thing, which I didn't have noted down here, is you have to let your airline know. Depending on the airline, you have to either ring them or there's a specific form that you have to fill in with at least a week's notice. So,
who did you fly with?
So last year in New Zealand, pretty easy. Just rang them, said, "Yep, no problems, noted." This year, Emirates, and I left it till about 4 days before, and it got to the day before, and I rang them and I said, I still haven't got because they say you don't go to the airport unless you have a confirmation from us saying that we've checked your application and that you're okay to travel with a firearm. And so on top of the New Zealand permit, I'm going, oh my gosh, haven't heard from the airline. So I rang them and they were pretty good. They escalated it and pretty quickly got an email saying, yep, no problems. But yeah, that's a critical step too, to let the airline know.
I know. What's next? Well, that's it.
I mean, that's pretty much it. So I covered kind of the all the forms that you need to do.
Coming back then?
Yeah, sorry. So I should mention, when you get to New Zealand, you get your bags and you go to a special counter. You tell them that you're waiting on a rifle and they bring it. You go to a room and they check it. They issue you the NZ Police issue you with the temporary firearms permit. It's an A4 printout basically, which is your online application, but it's colour and they sign it with ink, and that's what you have to carry with you at all times when you're over there, along with your Aussie license and passport and other identifying details. So yeah, they check the rifle and you're pretty much good to go. So yeah, straight to get the rental car or you get picked up and off you go. But I can't stress enough in that application, just you can never have too much detail. Like you know, around safety specifically. So things like, my rifle will be securely locked at all times when not in use. I brought a bike chain and it's going to be chained to the inside of the boot in the car. That sort of level of detail will all help that process, because the last thing you want, as they had to clarify some details last year. They came back, and if you don't check your emails or you miss it, then you run the risk of actually then it being on you, as in terms of the reason why they don't end up processing your application. So as much detail as you can, that's the most important thing. But then after your trip, same thing, you go to the airport. They check it. It's a lot easier going back. They pretty much just go, yep, no worries, tear up the license, and you go to the counter and give it to the airline and they board it for you. You get to Australia and they then recheck everything. So you go through the declare line, they open up everything. You'd be declaring stuff anyway because you've been in a wilderness area. So your boots, they want to check your tent. They want to check, we had some leftover freeze-dried food. So I'm literally ticking yes to everything on the way back. Animal parts, yes. You come back and they check, they literally go through everything and, that's it. So
the only thing we haven't covered, you just touched on it then, but was the head itself. So you boiled it out while you're over there? It's
got to be boiled, yeah. So you can't bring, I think on one of your other reps you mentioned green skins. Yeah, so you can't bring those back in. But with the heads, I had to boil it at the friend of a friend's place this year. And do all of that. So I had to allow time on the last day to do that before our flight. So we were a bit rushed again. Probably next time allow a little bit more time. But I ended up, just boiling it all out. Actually went through the car wash to gurney it off there and bubble wrapped the hell out of it. So bag, bubble wrap, all over the antlers and over the skull. And pretty much that's good to go. It just checks in and
goes through as checked luggage. One thing I have had them be pretty firm on is the points. They weren't worried about it being a deer, but the points had to be covered so they wouldn't stab anyone. And so we do that by a garden hose. So you just get garden hose and a lighter, and you sort of heat it up a bit, and then you push it over the point, and then duct tape it on.
Yeah. I saw a couple of guys last year that had come from a safari or guided tour, and they had racks for days on their trolleys, and they had garden hoses on the ends. So that was pretty cool. I ended up just doing double bubble wrap kind of thing, just ultra padded on all the points, and just ended up looking like this funny kind of bubble wrapped kind of head. But it did the trick, and they were happy with it. And I sort of did it at the counter, to be honest, because we were so rushed. I got there and I go, "Is this good enough?" And they go, "Yeah, that's fine. And checked it in, and off we went.
That's it. And then did customs check it over pretty thoroughly?
Oh, yeah. So the other there's so many things to it. But so the other thing is, I don't know, maybe but bringing it back, I ended up, this is ahead of time, I looked up what the requirements were to bring back ahead if I was to be successful. And the only things I could find on Border Force website was that it had to be clean, free of flesh, and fully boiled. But I did notice that the Ministry of Primary Industries in New Zealand are able to issue you with a certificate which has a unique reference number, basically describing what it is that you're carrying. So I figure some countries want that. I'm not clear on whether Australia needed it, but I showed it to the customs person and she looked at it and that was, she said that's fine. So I don't know whether do you know?
Again, I agree that it's probably a nice thing to have. I've had people use it in the past and not use it. It's essentially a vet certificate. So when sometimes you'll travel internationally and they request a vet certificate to say what the actual animal is that we're dealing with and that it was killed legally, kind of thing. And my reference to that is, ibex and things coming out of Spain and whatnot. And that's actually quite hard to get over there sometimes because they might want to take a 2-week processing on that. And you're like, no, I'm out of the mountains now and I'll fly home tomorrow. So they actually, in those situations, they actually usually pre-issue them illegally, but it's pre-issued so that by the time you shot it, you've already got your vet certificate and then you can fly out.
So the sense I got from speaking to them last year was that they could do that. And I'll just need to let them know and basically it'd be pre-issued. This year, the person I was speaking to there, because you basically go on the website, Ministry of Primary Industries New Zealand, you put in what you're chasing, red deer or chamois or whatever it is, the rough kind of weight and everything. And that application basically sits there. You pay a fee of 50 NZ dollars, and should you need a certificate to be issued, they issue it, and they keep the fee, or otherwise, if you don't use it, they just refund you the $50. So, you're not losing out if you don't get anything.
I think, like this you said earlier, it's not a bad thing to have too much information.
That's right. And so this year, she said, "Oh, well, you have to let us know at least 2 days before the trip." And I go, "Well, I'll be at a reception. How am I going to call you? I can't call you." She goes, "Oh, you can send an email." So I ended up sending an email from the tops from the InReach, just saying, can you please issue, stacked out, can you please issue to this email address as per application in the system? And got to the bottom and checked. Once we got into reception and the permit was scanned in, they actually scanned the physical document that had the original ink stamp and everything. And she said I could pick up the physical permit, but we ran out of time and I didn't end up needing it anyway. So, something to think about if you do want to just dot every I and cross every T. If you are planning on doing that, it's a good thing to have just in case.
Did you look at bringing any meat home?
I didn't think you could.
It's possible. It's
Is it?
possible. Yeah,
Okay.
It's a grey area, and I won't get into it too much because someone showed me how to do it. But it's along the lines of you do what you do up on the mountain, then take it down the bottom, go to the butcher, and they will, if they're nice enough, which most of them are hunters anyway. So they will wrap it in their paper and then put their stamp on it. It just says product of New Zealand, and then you can fly home with it. It's got to be frozen, but you're
Yeah.
allowed
Okay.
like 15 kilos or something. Like you're not going to fill 32 kilos, but it's a good way to get some backstraps home.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to look into that for next time because I mean that's the thing. Yeah, obviously we didn't end up eating the whole thing when we were up there. We definitely got through a fair bit, but that's kind of on your mind. You don't want to kind of leave things there. And if we could have brought it back, we definitely would have. So that's good to know.
Avid listener of the podcast, have I told you the story of when I was on my honeymoon and all the antlers I brought back? Have I mentioned that story?
No, I don't. Well, I can't recall. Okay. Yeah, not to me directly.
Well, I'll retell it, and it's similar issue, it's similar situation, and similar issues, but with a lot less paperwork and preparation. And it happened so randomly. We were it's called the country music capital of Canada, and I can't remember the town, but it was a dive, and it was not what it looked like it was going to be on the maps. Wrong season or whatever, I don't know, but it was terrible. But we went to the local hunting store because that's what you do when you're on your honeymoon. And we were in a massive camper van. We pulled up out the front of this thing, and there was, just homeless people everywhere, and it was a sad sort of looking town. But inside the hunting shop, there was all these on the wall, mule deer, whitetail, mule deer, or just skull caps all the way around. And it just made like the whole circle of the shop, or square was. And I just spoke to the guy, and he's like, "Oh, my brother and I shot pretty much most of those. Some of my uncles and some of my dad's." I was like, "Any of them for sale?" He said, "Well, you want to buy some?" Like he'd never been asked that. He said, well, "Maybe." I said, "How much?" He said, $15, $10. I said, "How many do you want to sell?" Like I didn't even question it. How many do you want to sell? And anyway, so he said, "Well, pick which ones you want." So I went around and I picked, 10 nice sets. I said, "Right, $150." He goes, "I'll make it 100. That's fine. US or Canadian, I'd say." But he goes, "Do you want more?" I was like, "Okay. Why?" He goes, "Look, okay, come with me." Anyway, he walks out the stop, turns the close sign around, locks the door behind us. He said, "Follow me to my house." So we get to his house, and he's literally got this pile of death that's 8 foot high, and it's just antlers stacked on top of antlers, and they've just skull capped them with a recipro saw and stuck them on the pole. So they've still got fur on them, but from 5 years old through to last month sort of thing. And anyway, we went through the pile, and I picked some really nice ones, and the same thing, it was $10 a set, and I mean like a set on a skull cap. But some of them were still on the skulls, and the skulls are rotten and that. He said, "Oh, we better cut that skull off." He gets out a Husqvarna chainsaw with a blade on it that's wider than my screen. I can't even get it in the screen. It was a huge, massive saw, and I'm in flip-flops and it's raining, and I'm standing on the skull, and he's got this huge saw, and we're trying to cut the skull right next to my toes, and my wife's like, "Man, this is going to end poorly." Anyway, we got him off, and we filled up. There was a bath inside this camper van because the thing was huge, and we filled up the bath with these things. And we're like, "Righto, what's the next step?" We went to the local Walmart. We got domestos, like bleach, scrubbing brushes, knives, black plastic bags, duct tape, another duffel bag because we had no duffel bag for these things, and detergent, and a boiling pot. And it wasn't until I was ringing it up across the thing, I'm like, "This is a kill kit. This is a kill kit."
Would have loved to see the checkout person.
Like, that's my kill kit in my backpack now. That's different, that's got knives and things in it. But this was like a proper, we've murdered 20 people and we're going to dissolve their bones inside our little bus. And for that next 24 hours, that poor little camper van just stunk of boiling out rotten heads. And
Why were they so cheap?
they meant nothing to it. Like, he just had that many. He was stoked to make $250.
Really?
Like, they just meant nothing to him. It's like someone who lives on a farm that just has fallow on it, I suppose. Like, they just pick up antlers and it's just nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
crazy.
But the kicker was, so when we went to take them home, I filled a duffel bag and we were flying. It was Qantas, I'd say, and 23 kilos. So I measured this duffel bag out. It was properly like 22.9 kilos of antlers all jengered together. There was skull cap we like extra cut off with hand saws just to get the grams down. And we got the bag really compressively filled. And we got to the counter and she said, "Oh, what are you checking in?" And on the thing, there was an option for antlers. And I'm like, "Antlers?" And she goes, "In there?" I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, there's usually an extra fee for antlers." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, how much is it?" And she goes, $150. "How many do you have?" And I was like, "What's the fee for?" And she goes, "Well, it's because it's like a set of antlers, it goes down the conveyor belt. We've got to process it like a bag." I was like, "Oh, no, these are just like single ones." She goes, "Oh, don't worry about the fee then." So in my head, I'm like, right, I've got like 30 sets of antlers that are $150 a set. That part was fine. And then we got through to Sydney Customs and they pull them out on that little bench where you declare everything.
Mm.
And they're starting to go through them all. And they were clean. And he's like separating them into species, like in muleys on this side and whitetail on this side. And he's like, "We don't know what these are." I said, "Well, they're antlers of deer." And he said, "What type of deer?" I told him. He goes, "But are they endangered?"
Yeah.
And this is where the vet certificate thing comes in.
Yeah.
I had none of that. So he's like, "We might have to send these to Canberra to get identified." I said, "I can identify them."
Oh no. Yeah.
And I said, "I can show you a photo of every single American."
Yeah, that's right. Get your phone. Here's
Jim Shockey with 10 of them. Like, anyway, the conversation was like, it was an awkward conversation for like maybe only 2 or 3 minutes. And my wife's next to me, like, "I've just married this guy. What's he doing? Getting all this crap across the border." And the guy said, "I'm going to let you go this time, but," and then he started going on again. And I was into him, like trying to teach him a little bit in an angry, and my wife's like, "He said he's going to let you go this time. He said he's going to let you go this time. Just get out of here." Anyway, walked out with a 23 kilo duffel bag of whitetail and mule.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I still got, they're just on the other side of this wall. I've still got a fair few of them. I give them out as gifts, or the wife makes antler chandeliers or something.
I was going to say, yeah. Have you done a chandelier?
Not a chandelier. Sorry, she did a lamp. So it's a timber base with this whitetail antlers coming around it and a pole going up the middle with a lampshade on top. No, I leave the chandeliers to old mate Rapid Effects. He does really nice chandeliers, and I don't want to touch them. But
I've seen them actually. Yeah, they're really good.
We did.
But
you talk. I'm going to make some noise here when I get one of the lamps that we started making.
I was going to say, there is one thing I have seen amongst the hundreds of forms that you fill out is on the NZ side. There's CITES declaration, which has a list of species that aren't endangered, and that's something that I just always keep in my pack. Wow!
So it's
holy smokes!
Fallow antler on a nice bit of spotted gum that's waiting for it. We've got a match set, so it's like a bookend.
Oh, you do? You've got the other one? Yeah, great.
Giant.
Look at that. That's a nice moose.
Bedside table. Put your watch and phone on there or something.
Yeah,
and it was too nice to sell, so I kept that one for the office.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, CITES.
CITES,
they do look after those things.
So, I don't know whether that helps or not, or whether that would help in a scenario like you had, where you just whip it out and it says, whatever deer, like red deer, is not endangered. It doesn't help the identifying side of things, but it sort of, if they can identify it, then it's pretty quickly you can see that it's not. So I don't know. I just kept it in my pack of forms. So
I just pressed a button on my microphone, and instead of muting me, it turned me on. Have you been able to hear me fine?
I've been able to hear you. Yeah. That would be
was a bit worried there. I had no audio for the last 25 minutes.
No,
that's right. If you can't hear me, you would have known. But well, that's sort of all the things I wanted to cover tonight. Gio, is there anything you want to add? I think we were talking about a topic for tonight, and what I wanted to look at was the difference between the New Zealand, R licensing public land model versus the Australian one, and just your final thoughts on how accessible New Zealand is for Aussies.
Very. I mean, if you can get past the form bit and just the nerves of steel to, get your permit 2 days before you fly type thing. If you can get past that, then it's awesome. Definitely do it. As you said, it's so close. It's a 3-hour flight. Whether you go Queenstown or Christchurch or wherever, North Island even, but certainly it's so accessible. It's so easy. That the culture over there is. The thing that struck me was just the hunting and fishing culture that they have over there. Like, I'm there boiling this head on the side of the road, and guys are walking past going, "Oh, it's a great head. Oh, is that, PB?" and chat for half an hour just because they love it. And so it's a great spot to go. It's there's no real nasties, so you don't have to worry about spiders or snakes. And I mean the abundance of beauty there is just so good. So if you can do it, once you do it, I guarantee you'll do it again and again and again. And so whether it's DIY or through a guide, I mean, you can't really go wrong.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for the detailed breakdown. I hope that helps those that are listening and watching, and we might cut that down into a separate little video so then you can share that video around. And then there is information online about the things that you just had to work out yourself. And for a small fee of $259, Gio doesn't know this yet, but he's going to process paperwork for everyone. And so send him all your information and get him to do it for you. Now he knows how to do it.
Hey, as long as I can come on the trip as well.
That's just your sideline business. Yeah, he'll do it in his name, and then you can take it off him when you get on the other side. That's
right. But hopefully I didn't, confuse people listening too much. As I said, there's a good write-up through that Mansfield website. So have a look at that if you want a summary.
They travel to New Zealand. Mel, she was just in New Zealand 2 weeks ago or something, shooting reds.
Oh, did they? So. Okay. I don't know them, but that's the only thing I could find that was recent from I think June last year, which was awesome. So well done to them. So hopefully that's giving you confidence. It's really easy to do. Once you've got your head around what you need to do, and definitely do it if you can get the chance.
Well, I hope this has helped a few people. It's definitely helped me, and I'll get that link for that article and we'll get it shared when the episode comes out. Thanks for your time tonight, Gio. It's been great chatting, and we'll talk soon.
It's been great to be here. Thanks for having me.
See you guys.